The fluorescent lights overhead flickered as Michael, a software engineer, saved his work on Halloween night. He despised the holiday, viewing it as trivial and a pointless distraction. The streets were empty as he left the office at 2 a.m., an eerie fog rolling in off the bay to envelop the deserted city in a damp gray shroud. The only sound was the echo of his lonely footsteps off the office building. A chill ran down his spine as he fumbled for his keys, the metallic jangle loud in the silence. The fog swirled around his ankles, cold and clammy. Driving through the deserted streets, his headlights illuminated a girl standing at a decaying bus stop. She looked young, dressed in a dirty, tattered dress that hung loosely from her thin frame, her face hidden by long, wet hair the color of mold. An odd, uneasy feeling made Michael hesitate, his skin prickling with unease, but he stopped to offer her a ride. The bus shelter loomed behind her, its cracked plastic advertising forgotten products. Water dripped from the rusted roof, hitting the pavement with a steady rhythm. The sound echoed through the stillness. The girl silently entered the car, her movements stiff and unnatural. Immediately, a rancid smell like rotting flowers filled the vehicle, making Michael's stomach churn. She remained quiet, barely moving, her head still bowed, so her face remained hidden. Michael attempted small talk, but she only muttered cryptically, her voice barely audible, repeating, "I just want to go home." Her words sent a shiver down his spine. The air in the car seemed to thicken, becoming heavier. As Michael drove, the tension ratcheted up, the silence between them a thick, suffocating presence heavier than the fog outside. The girl began humming a haunting melody, the notes wavering and discordant like a dying animal's cry. Each note scraped against Michael's sanity, a physical assault on his nerves. His skin crawled, not just with unease, but with a prickling sensation, as if unseen insects were burrowing beneath his flesh. Her voice, initially a low hum, grew louder, more distorted, less human, a guttural rasp that grated against his eardrums, a sound that vibrated in his very bones. The stench of rot intensified, no longer just a smell, but a palpable entity filling the car, clinging to the back of his throat, a foul taste coating his tongue. His mouth felt dry, his throat constricting, each breath a struggle. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling down his temples, mingling with the creeping chill that settled deep within his bones. He felt a growing pressure in his chest, a suffocating weight pressing down, making it difficult to breathe. The air itself seemed to thicken, to vibrate with a malevolent energy, a palpable sense of dread that pressed in on him from all sides. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat that threatened to burst through his chest. He glanced at his reflection in the rearview mirror. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror, his mouth a grim, silent scream. As Michael stole a glance at his passenger, a chilling detail caught his eye. Her skin seemed to shift unnaturally, almost as if it were fraying at the edges. He blinked, trying to dismiss it as a trick of the dim light, his overworked mind playing tricks on him. But when she slowly turned her head, half her face appeared disturbingly wrong, pale, discolored, and unnervingly smooth in some areas, yet cracked in others. He could feel a wave of nausea rising, his chest tightening with a deep sense of dread. Her eyes, dark and empty like a void, locked onto his, and in them he saw his own fear reflected. A low, rasping hum filled the air, vibrating with an unsettling energy that seemed to seep into his bones, rattling him to his core. His heart pounded against his ribs, each beat amplifying the terror building inside him. Michael tried to stop the car but found himself unable to control the vehicle. The girl reached out with a skeletal hand, her voice echoing unnaturally in his mind. "You can't leave!" The car swerved as he slammed on the brakes, and Michael finally managed to jump out, his heart pounding in his chest. The cool night air hit him like a slap. He stumbled away from the car, his legs trembling. The fog swirled around him, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Stumbling through the thick fog, Michael heard the girl's voice surrounding him, coming from all directions. He looked back to see her standing on the deserted road, her glowing eyes locked on him as she began walking toward him. The sound of her cracking bones followed him as he ran, echoing through the fog. His breath came in ragged gasps, his lungs burning. The fog swirled around him, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. He could feel her gaze on him, a cold weight. Michael found a small gas station and rushed inside, frantically trying to explain what happened to the bored clerk. The police were called, and they drove Michael back to his car. However, there was no sign of the girl, and the car was completely clean. No blood, no decayed flesh, nothing. It was as if the entire encounter had never happened. The police dismissed Michael's claims as a stress-induced hallucination. As he was escorted home, a growing sense of dread filled him. He wondered if it was all in his head, but the lingering smell of rot in his clothes kept the fear alive. Something felt unresolved, a thread left dangling. Back home, Michael tried to shake off the experience. He took a long, scalding shower, trying to rid himself of the foul stench. Exhausted, he went to bed, but the memory of the girl's peeling skin and glowing eyes haunted him. He could still hear her humming, the notes echoing in his mind. The sound seemed to come from all around him, filling the room. He couldn't escape it. In the middle of the night, Michael's phone buzzed on his nightstand. It was a text from an unknown number.
"I'll be waiting outside."
His heart pounded as he rushed to the window, and under the dim streetlight, he saw the girl standing, smiling at him, her skin rotting away. Her eyes glowed in the dark. Michael realized he was never truly free of her. The story ends with him staring out of the window, paralyzed by fear, knowing that whatever she was, she would never leave him alone. The final image was the girl, slowly walking toward his house, her rotting face grinning in the dark, her black eyes fixed on him. He could feel her gaze on him, a cold weight.